Well, it wasn't exactly the result we were hoping for over the weekend, as we needed a sweep going into Miami. They do win the series, though, as the Braves give themselves a chance going into the final week of the season. But it's going to take a lot. But their postseason begins right now with this big series against the Mets, which we'll preview on today's episode. We'll also talk about the last week at Gwinnett and the minor league level. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, as it does help out the show a lot. When you do that, if you're listening on the audio version, you can leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Well, we went into the weekend saying the Atlanta Braves needed a sweep, and those aren't easy to get no matter who you're playing, and the Braves couldn't get it done. But they do get a series win, and now you go into this week with a chance to get into the postseason. We'll talk about what happened over the weekend, and obviously later in the episode, we'll set you up. We'll spend a lot of our time setting you up for this big Mets series. And in between there, we'll talk about what happened at Gwinnett this week as the minor league season come to an end, at least for Braves players or Braves teams. This episode, though, is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, that's booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. As I said in our open here, going down to the Marlins, playing one of the worst teams in baseball, your season on the line, you needed a sweep. And you lost the game on Friday, so that took all that out right away. And we're going to look at that game right now because it's a recent one, but this is just, it's been the story all year long. There have been games that you needed to win, games that you should win, and the Rays weren't able to do it. So yeah, it hurts to drop a game here to the Marlins. But again, you can look at blowing that game to the Rockies, losing a 1-0 game to the White Sox, losing a series to the White Sox. You can look at all these games, losing the season series to the Nationals. It all just kind of adds up to the spot that the Braves are in now, where basically you need a sweep to be able to guarantee or at least control your destiny the rest of the way, which the Braves do right now. But in order to keep that, they have to sweep what's been one of the best teams in baseball. But again, we'll preview that later in the episode. Let's talk about what happened over the weekend first, where the Braves at least do avoid disaster by winning Saturday and Sunday. And you look at the offense, and it's the same old issues that it's been all year long. And it's why I said on the Mailbag podcast on Friday, when I answered the question, are the Braves going to play in October? I said, no, I don't think so, because I cannot trust this offense to consistently give me a week and a half long stretch of playing good baseball. And while they won the series over the Marlins, they didn't sweep it because you couldn't get that consistent offense from this group. And that's with a lot of guys having good weekends. But it's the same issue of not being able to score without the home run ball, not being able to execute with a runner on third and less than 2 outs. It's the same thing that we've seen all year long. Can't get that big hit. I mean, Friday night, where is that big hit in the second half of the game to give you the lead? It's just the same issues we have seen all year long from this Braves offense. And I understand you can't come through in every clutch run-scoring opportunity. That's just not realistic for any team. But this Braves team in particular just feels like they have squandered opportunity after opportunity. And when you have the injuries that you have and the lineup is not up to par with where you expected it to be, when you have those chances, again, it really heightens the need to come through in those situations, because you may not get them as often. But that really wasn't the case, and wasn't the case the last couple of weeks. And it's just you weren't able to come up when you had those opportunities, when they were there and presented themselves. And then this offense just is unable to score without that home run ball. And again, that's been the issue all year long. And it's why I don't think this team will make the postseason. And that's a real bummer, because this pitching staff is really good and has an opportunity to do some special things. but this offense is most likely going to be what holds them back. Not giving up hope yet. We're obviously going to preview the series later, and the Braves have a chance, but it's why I just don't feel confident in them getting there. Now, like I said, there were plenty of players who had good weekends and a lot of players that seem to be heating up in the lineup at the right time. Gio Urshela had 6 hits on the weekend, including a double and 2 home runs, showing off some power. Look, I'm starting to come around on the idea of starting him at shortstop because Arcia continues to be bad. He was 2 for 12 on the weekend. He did have a home run, just missed another one, but 5 strikeouts in the at-bats just continued to look very poor. Had a double play on Sunday as well late in the game where you're looking to add on, and the at-bats just look awful. The reasoning that I had initially for keeping Arcia at shortstop and Urshela at third is because I think it keeps the left side of your infield defense really good. And I think that's still the case. Urshela has been really good defensively, although I think he made a mistake on a bunt in this game that I'll talk about. And Arcia has obviously been strong, not Gold Glove caliber, maybe like we saw in the first half of the season, but he's been good and is obviously a positive defensively at shortstop. But the offense is just so bad. And again, getting back to my reasoning why I said keep Arcia at shortstop is because I didn't think the gap between Arcia and Urshela offensively was more than the gap that it might be there between Urshela and Arcia defensively at shortstop. But if Urshela is going to hit like this, then that gap is quite large. And maybe it is worth taking the risk to try to get some offense and maybe using Arcia as a replacement late. The other side of that, too, is that Whit Merrifield's playing on a broken foot, and he wasn't exactly tearing the cover off the baseball when Ozzie came back. So, again, there's not a ton of great options for your 8th, 9 hitters in the order right now. Both catchers are absolutely a disaster at the moment. I know everybody wants to get on Sean Murphy, but Travis d'Arnaud's been terrible for a while now. And my thing with that has always been that both catchers are going to be terrible at the plate. At least play the guy who's going to be sound back there defensively. And Sean Murphy is that. Maybe he hasn't been that Gold Glover guy that he was last year and has been in the past, but another opportunity, another situation on Sunday where he saved a run with his ability to block the ball behind the plate. So again, putting all that aside, there were still some guys who had good weekends, including Matt Olson, who's really been good the past month and a half now. He had 4 hits on the weekend, 4 runs batted in, a home run, just 1 strikeout, and 4 walks. In the month of September, Matt Olson has 17 walks to 10 strikeouts. Talked about this on the postcast Sunday night. If you haven't listened to that, go back and do so. But Matt Olson has found something out with his swing. It's frustrating that it took him this long to do that. And I've said it before, with that swing, the way that he holds his hands out there like that, I think it's a swing that he is going to have to continually adjust and tinker to get his hands in the right spot to be on time. He certainly was not on time at the beginning of the year, missing a lot of these fastballs that he's now able to drive and get to. But whatever he has done, mechanical adjustment he has made, it is clearly working. And you're seeing more contact and you're seeing more loud contact from Matt Olson. And it's been great to see at a time where the Braves absolutely needed him. And now he's knocking on the door of a 3,100 season. Ozzie showed some signs on Sunday as well. He had the home run in the first inning to get the Braves on the board. He nearly hit another one later in this game as well. So hopefully that's a good sign for Ozzie that maybe he's going to start making an impact. Was not a great weekend for him overall, whether offensively or defensively. But the hottest player right now for the Braves is Michael Harris. 8 hits on the weekend, 11 hard hit balls. He has 14 hits in his last 6 games, and he is just completely on fire, being the Michael Harris that we all know that he can be, which is great because you got him batting leadoff and he's getting on base a ton. Then you have the issue with the lineup where you put Ozzie, you thrust him into that 2 spot coming off not playing for 2 months and only batting right-handed, where you had Jorge Soler, who was hot, and batting in that 2 spot. That decision baffles me. How you could make that decision, I have no idea. But either way, Michael Harris has been doing a great job getting on base, and that's great. As for the pitching side of things, Morton wasn't great on Friday, but he battled and at least gave the team a chance, but the offense just couldn't come through. Fried was great on Saturday, exactly what you needed Max Fried to be. And I think Holmes gave you as much as you could ask for. 4 innings, 2 runs, a couple of solo home runs on pitches that were mistakes. The first one certainly was a mistake. You could see Sean Murphy just drop his head. That was a hanging slider that was left right over the plate. He wanted that down and away. And the other one was a curveball that wasn't in a terrible location, but Jake Berger's just really strong and was able to drop the bat head on it. But overall, I thought Grant Holmes was fine. I was I was okay with the decision to send him back out there for that 5th inning, and the hook had to be pretty quick, and it was 2 batters in, but Grant Holmes, like I said, gave you all that he could and what you would have hoped for on Sunday to give your team a chance and not completely blow up the bullpen. Bullpen management on Sunday was a little odd. Joe Jimenez was down, apparently, because he pitched the first 2 games of that series. Snicker said only needed an emergency situation. I would say your season being on the line is an emergency situation, but hey, it all worked out. Lee comes into that 5th inning after Grant Holmes starts it and puts some runners on, and Dylan Lee does a great job getting you out of a jam. You try to push him for one more inning because you're trying to get some length out of your bullpen because you didn't get much length out of your starter, who was essentially a glorified opener. And then Lee comes back out for the next inning and gives up a couple of home runs, and the game is tied. And you go to Pierce Johnson, who has a good inning, and that was great to see for him as he needed one. And then with Joe Jimenez down, what it meant was Aaron Bummer and Daysbel Hernandez in the 7th inning. And look, I'm fine with Aaron Bummer. I am certainly an Aaron Bummer apologist. I think he is good and can be good. The bunt defense let him down in this inning. You had 2 situations. The one, I don't know if Ozzie was just playing up the middle and couldn't get to first base, but nobody's covering first base on a bunt to the first base side. And the second baseman has to get over there. And then they bunt again. And you have them dead at third base, or at least I thought they did. But Gio Urshela crashes down, and he's not there to cover the bag to get an out there. So next thing you know, it's bases loaded, nobody out, because you can't execute bunt defense on back-to-back plays. He gets a big strikeout, and that's also the situation where you had a huge block from Sean Murphy behind the plate. He gets a big strikeout of Xavier Edwards, and then he calls on Daysbel Hernandez to come in and get you out of that jam, and he does, and he was pumped up coming off. Again, I love Daysbel. I think he's going to be a good reliever. That was a bold decision. Now, he is somebody that when he's on, he can get a lot of strikeouts, and so I understand that part of it. But yeah, the Daysbel comes in and gets the job done, gets you out of a huge jam, and then Iglesias finishes it off with the last 2 innings. Talked a little bit about the defense. Soler continues to be a problem in right field, but at least at the moment, he's paying it off on the offensive side. To me, the difference between Ozzie and Witt at second base is glaring. And I love Ozzie. He's my second baseman. I'm glad he's back. But I think you could see it over the weekend. There's a double play in that game that could have been turned. I think if Witt's out there, it probably gets turned. But Ozzie just doesn't have that arm. He bounces it, and look, that's a ball that Matt Olson's tell you that he needs to scoop. But he bounces it, it goes to the dugout. It leads to an unearned run against Max Fried that ties the game there. Again, to me, the defense, just watching Whit Merrifield play there for a while and then seeing what we've seen from Ozzie the past 2 years, it's a wide gap. And the Braves are never going to replace Ozzie defensively, or I'm not going to say never, but I don't think that they will, because it's Ozzie. It's your guy, and I think that just sends a bad signal to him and the team if you do that, even if maybe it is the best decision to put you in a chance to win a game, which I know sounds crazy, but again, I've talked with numerous people about that who are, more well in tune with the team than I am, and they agree. I don't think the Braves would ever sub out Ozzie for a defensive replacement. Michael Harris remains amazing in center field. Again, he's going to win a Gold Glove out there one day. I talked about the bunt defense on Sunday that was brutal, and Murphy's good pick behind the plate. So those are some of my defensive takeaways from the weekend. That was a series win, but again, you needed a sweep going in, and with the Phillies not giving you much help, the Braves now really have their work cut out for them this week as they face the Mets. Before we get into that, though, we're going to have our last Minors Monday update of the regular season. It's only going to be Gwinnett, but you got some pitchers there that maybe could make an impact in the last week here. We'll talk about that here next. This episode of Locked On Braves is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yeah, we're talking about your baseball's rival cities, although if you're the Braves, you don't have to worry about that because we're at home for the rest of the way, unless they get to the postseason, and then maybe you can use Booking.com to go help the Braves out in the Wild Card Series. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. Nobody really wants to go to Philadelphia or New York, especially as we get into the colder months of the season. But if you need to go there, visit a stadium, go or review a stadium, whatever you need to do, you can use Booking.com to get you there. The right stake can make you a fan of any U.S. city. Book today on booking.com on the site or in the booking.com app. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can go to FanDuel.com, check that out. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/PlaySafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. I know Falcons fans are hurting this morning after a tough one on Sunday night. But again, you got a lot of stuff happening there on FanDuel.com with the NFL season and the Major League Baseball season coming to an end. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go make your second listen, the Locked On MLB podcast, where Sully is getting you set for the postseason. You can check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. I'll be honest, I don't know what the schedule necessarily is going to look like the rest of this week. It is the final week of the season. We're going to be talking a lot about this Mets series, but a lot of what we do here may depend on how that series goes and what that looks like. But we'll have 4 more episodes after this one this week. Just not sure of the timing and exactly what we're going to be talking about on those. Obviously, we'll have a mailbag episode at the end of the week. But again, a lot's going to be dependent on what happens in this Mets series, which again, we'll preview here in a little bit. But before we do that, let's get into our final Minors Monday segment of the regular season. After today, we'll probably take a break again, depending on what happens this week. But then we'll come back and we'll recap everything happening at the minor league level, some of the biggest breakouts, some guys who maybe regressed, and who could be some names to really watch going forward. So all that coming your way as we get into the offseason of Major League Baseball and minor league baseball. But let's look at some of the top prospects. A.J. Smith-Shawver, 6 innings, 6 hits, no walks. He gave up 5 earned runs because he gave up 4 home runs, which just continues to be the big issue for A.J. Smith-Shawver. But 10 strikeouts in this one is great to see. So some good with some bad. The 10 strikeouts in 6 innings is great, but obviously 4 home runs. And that's been his issue, whether it be at the minor league level or his short, brief stint at the major league level, giving up those home runs. You look at his numbers in 2024, it's a 4.85 ERA, a 1.24 whip, just a 213 average against. So he's not giving up a lot of hits, but again, 40 walks, not terrible, but certainly you want to see that number go down a little bit. And it's the 21 home runs. He still had 108 strikeouts in 89 innings, so still showing you that big stuff and potential. We'll obviously talk more about him throughout the offseason. This is a guy that probably should have spent this year at AA, or at least started there. But because the Braves, shot him up the system last year, he spent all year at AAA. And again, not terrible, but it really is just comes down to the home runs and limiting the walks, which again aren't terrible. But when you add the walks with all the home runs given up, that's going to lead to a 4.85 ERA despite batters hitting just 213 against you. As for Hurston Waldrop, 6 innings, 3 hits, 2 walks, no earned, 7 strikeouts. He did start at AA, and that's maybe why you see his season-long numbers a little bit better, at least the ERA, a 3.47 ERA, but a 1.48 whip. He had a 260 average against, which is not great, and 45 walks in those innings with 97 strikeouts to 93 and a third, but a walk per 9 of 5.40 at AAA. Certainly something that he's going to have to get under control. Same issue we talked about coming into the season. So again, we'll talk more about those guys as we get into the offseason. I still think they're big pitcher guys. They still have the most potential in this farm system, but still some things that they need to work on. And they're still young pitchers. We have to remember that. The Braves rushed them up. They should not have been thrown into those situations that they had to be thrown into. But I still think there's big potential for both of these guys. Nacho Alvarez, 4 for 20 with a walk and 4 strikeouts in his last week. He left the game on Saturday and then didn't play on Sunday, so maybe dealing with a little bit of injury there. But that's probably a cap on his season. I don't think we'll see him back up this year. Drew Hackenberg finished off an incredible season, 5 2/3 innings, 2 hits, did walk 4, but just 1 earned run with 4 strikeouts. He's going to be one of the biggest risers when we get to that part of the offseason. And Drake Baldwin as well. 8 for 21, 3 doubles, 3 walks in his final week. You look at his 2024 season, he slashed 276, 370, 423 with 19 doubles, 16 home runs, 72 walks, and 95 strikeouts. And he was even better at AAA. Same for Nacho, too. Both of those guys were even better at AAA with a 298 average, 407 on base, and a 484 slug with 12 home runs in 72 games. He's going to be a big riser. Again, I've never been that high on Drake Baldwin and his swing, but I'm definitely going to have to go back and watch some more in the offseason and maybe see if I need to reevaluate that, because it's been a monster year for him, and we'll see if he's in the plans for the Braves long term, whether that's a catcher, DH, whatever it may be. Certainly Drake Baldwin has stepped up his prospect pedigree this season. And then others down at Gwinnett, Luke Williams was 8 for 24 this past week, 2 triples, a home run, 3 walks, and a stolen base. Justin Dean, 5 for 10 with a double and 3 steals. Ian Anderson, 6 innings, 3 hits, 4 walks, 1 earned run on a solo shot, and 5 strikeouts. You look at Ian Anderson's season at AAA coming back from injury, a 3.96 ERA, a 1.43 whip, a 241 average, 27 walks to 53 strikeouts and 51 2/3 innings, a 4.64 walk per 9. It's honestly the Ian Anderson that we saw before the injury. And don't forget that Ian Anderson had gotten demoted because he could not find that command and hitters were starting to lay off that changeup. It's, the similar Ian Anderson who struggles with control, can still, have good outings when he's not giving up a home run and he's not combining those walks with a bunch of hits. Look, do I think he deserves an opportunity or a start here late in the season? Yeah, just because of his track record and what he's been able to do at the big leagues, I think maybe you should have given him a start. Could he give you more than what Grant Holmes has given you in 2 starts? I think so. And now if it comes down to it, the last series of the season coming up on Saturday, are you going to start Grant Holmes again, or are you going to give Ian Anderson an opportunity? We'll see what the Braves decide to do. And again, a lot of that may dictate what happens in this Mets series, but your season on the line, do you feel more comfortable with Grant Holmes getting you 5, 6 good innings or Ian Anderson? I think it's a legitimate question. And certainly the one the Braves have answered and said they feel better with Grant Holmes. And again, Grant Holmes has done, as well as you could ask in those spots. Hayden Harris, 4 strikeouts in 2 innings. Tyler Matzik, a perfect inning with 2 strikeouts. He was trying to get his way back to the major league level. So again, that's a wrap on the minor league season for the Braves, as the Gwinnett Stripers did not make the postseason. A lot of positives, I think, at the farm system, the Braves farm system this year. Again, we'll talk about that more as we get into the offseason. But next, we got to preview this huge Mets series coming your way this week. Got the off day on Monday, and then we're going to get into this Mets series. We'll talk about that here next. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. And right now, you got 1 weekend left to do this. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. That's 4 weeks of free wins. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including Georgia and Alabama. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. It is the final week of the regular season here. Next week, we're either giving a postmortem for this 2024 season, or we're getting ready for a big wild card series. But it all depends on what happens this week. You got 3 at home against the Mets, 3 at home against the Royals, who are now fighting for their postseason lives as well. I was hoping the Royals would kind of be cruising, resting up in that final series, but they need every win they can get the rest of the way. Before we can get to that, obviously, it is all about this Mets series. And you look at the Mets and what they have done since May 30th. They are 64-36. Let me say that again. The Mets are 64-36 since the end of May. They have been one of the best teams in baseball during that stretch, and they've been getting it done on both sides. You look at their offense since the All-Star break, so not quite since that stretch, but it was easier for me to split it up pre and post All-Star break on MLB.com. You look at their offense since the All-Star break, they're 9th in OPS, they're 5th in home runs, they're 6th in walks, they're 8th in on-base percentage. It's just they've been a top 10 offense, and they've also been a top 10 pitching staff. They're 6th in ERA, they're 7th in WHIP, the second best average against, they're 7th in strikeout per 9. You look at some of the weaknesses on those sides, they're 22nd in stolen base, so maybe you don't have to worry about that quite as much. They have the 10th most strikeouts, which is not really what we've become accustomed to with this Mets lineup. We've been used to them being more of just a pesky offense that's going to work the count, put the ball in play, and they still do that for the most part, but they will strike out a good bit. I think, obviously Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, who are guys that have been really good for them lately and in the second half, but those are guys that have 70 strikeouts over that stretch that I just mentioned. And on the pitching side, they're 24th in walk per 9. So they will walk you. Unfortunately, that's something the Braves just don't allow other teams to do. But those are a few of the weaknesses that they've had in the second half. But for the most part, it's been a top 10 offense and a top 10 pitching staff for 3-4 months now. And that's why they're in the spot that they are in. So again, don't, and I know most Braves fans aren't, but if you've been paying attention at all to what's been happening with the Mets in the second half, they have been one of the better teams in baseball. So this is going to be a tough task. And you look at who's hot post the All-Star break. Obviously, we don't know yet if Francisco Lindor is going to be available. He was making, I think, a legitimate case for the NL MVP. It's obviously not going to happen now with what Ohtani is doing, but playing, shortstop every day and doing so for a Mets team that didn't have much aspirations coming into the season, and then doing what Lindor has done, which is 303, 364, 564 with 14 home runs and 9 steals since the All-Star break, and pushing his team into a postseason spot. I thought there was a legitimate case for Francisco Lindor to be in the MVP conversation. But now that he's injured, obviously, and with what Ohtani has done, that's not even a discussion at this point. And we don't know if Lindor is going to be back, but he is certainly a big reason why the Mets are where they are. Pete Alonso, 15 home runs since the All-Star break, 31 walks as well, and an 866 OPS. I mentioned Mark Vientos and Pete Alonso. 15 home runs for Alonso, the 13 home runs for Mark Vientos, who has had somewhat of a breakout year for them. Jeff McNeil, who is out for the season, he was having a great second half. He had a 923 OPS after the All-Star break in 41 games. So Mets could be dealing with some injuries offensively as well. It hasn't really slowed them down any. And then Luis Angel Acuna. Since coming out, and this was going into Sunday night's game, so I don't have the updated stats here, but 385, 407, 885 with 3 home runs in his first 8 games. And I've joked about it before. I joked about it on the postcast. How fitting would it be for this 2024 season that has been such a disaster for the Braves if an Acuna in a Mets uniform comes in and helps them eliminate the Braves? And look, he may not play if Lindor's back and healthy because, I think Jimenez has been really good for them too. So I don't think you take him out of the lineup. But Acuna has been great and certainly given the Mets a spark since coming up. Now look on the pitching side of things. Sean Manaea, 309 ERA, a 0.87 whip, just a 173 average against with 87 strikeouts and 81 2/3 innings since the All-Star break. What is interesting here is that Manaea said after watching Chris Sale dominate, I don't know if he used that word exactly, but after watching Chris Sale dominate the Mets earlier in the year, he decided to go back to that arm slot, kind of similar to Chris Sale, which is an arm slot that he threw from earlier in his career. He decided to go back to that, and he has taken off since that has happened. He's been one of the better pitchers in baseball. Jose Quintana, a 3.11 ERA since the All-Star break. David Peterson, 3.07. Luis Severino, 3.82, and he's really got the strikeouts back as well, 75 strikeouts and 68 1/3 innings since the All-Star break. So all of their, or at least those 4 of their starters, have an ERA under 4 since the All-Star break. And in the case of Manaea, Quintana, and Peterson, really around 3 since the All-Star break. And then in the bullpen, it's Edwin Diaz, who you saw come on to get a 2-inning save, just like Iglesias on Sunday. He has a 2.82 ERA and a 0.76 whip with 38 strikeouts and 22 1/3 innings since the All-Star break. And again, these are numbers before Sunday night's game. And Jose Butto he's in the rotation for them early in the year, doing some good things. They moved him to the bullpen, and he's been really good with a 2.77 ERA and a 1.19 whip with 29 strikeouts in 26 innings. I still think that bullpen is where you want to get with the Mets, and their starters have obviously given them a lot of length where you can turn it over to Buto, Diaz, and Reed Garrett, who has a 1.84 ERA and a 1.02 WHIP in the second half. More than anything for the Mets, and I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks when we've been discussing this upcoming series, Mets are playing with a ton of confidence. You watch them play, and especially at home, you saw it on Sunday night. That crowd was really loud. Hopefully the Braves crowd can match that this week. But they're just playing with a ton of confidence. They feel like they're going to win every game. And it's that confidence that we've seen the Braves play with for the last 6 years. I don't know that they have that right now. I know as a fan, I don't. Certainly I hope the players do. But that's just that kind of sense that you get watching this Mets team right now and the way that they've been playing in the second half. It's like they're playing with house money. Nothing was expected of them this year. That's not the case for the Braves, where we were talking World Series or bust coming in. For the Mets coming in, it's would they be in this race at all? Would they even have a chance to get a wild card spot? And so they're somewhat playing with house money. They have a lot of confidence, and they're playing really good baseball. So again, it's going to be a tough matchup for the Braves in this series. However, they do have a chance. With everything that's happened with the Braves this year, they have a chance. And you look at the pitching matchups in this one, the Braves are going to throw their 3 starters that they have available: Schwellenbach, Sale, and Max Fried. It's going to be Schwellenbach versus Severino, David Peterson against Chris Sale, and Sean Manaea versus Max Fried. So look, the Braves could have pushed Sale to Tuesday to give them a chance in 162 if you needed to use them there. But either way, this is the series. This is the Braves postseason. They have to at least win this series, if not sweep it. And you got your 3 best starters on the mound. And so you know those guys are going to give you a chance, again, as it has been the case all year long. What are you going to get from this Braves offense? Can they step up? Can they get those big hits in a big moment? Can you get to those starters and run them out of the game like they did in that Dodgers series where they had some good at-bats? Can you do that and try to get into this Mets bullpen early before they turn it over to those good guys on the back end? That is what the Braves have to get done in this 3-game series. They have to bring it every night, that same intensity. This is a postseason. Braves might not make it to the actual postseason, but for all intents and purposes, these are postseason games for the Atlanta Braves, and you have to play like that each and every night. Like I said, series win at the worst, but honestly, you need to be able to control your destiny in those last 3 games. You have to sweep the Mets, and it's going to be tough because they're a really good team. They just took a big series against the Phillies. They've been playing great baseball, as we talked about, but the Braves have a chance. And that's all you can really hope for. Again, with all the injuries the Braves have had, and I know that they've hurt themselves with the way they've played against teams below 500, but it's the last week of the season. You have a chance. Again, hopefully fans show out to support the team this week. And again, this could be your postseason, so enjoy it. Enjoy the last week of the season. Enjoy this huge series against the Mets. Hopefully the Braves are able to get it done. We'll obviously be talking about it here and on the postcast. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button so others can find us in the last week and going into the offseason. We're going to have a lot to talk about there, no matter how this thing ends up. Make sure you follow us on social media at shortstopball, at @LockedOn_Braves. Listen to all these Braves and Mets games on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Search Braves. Again, thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.